get ready, because today we're going to dig into some seriously mind-blowing history.
Oh, I like where this is going.
We're diving deep into cyborgs versus the Earth Goddess.
Whoa, okay. With a title like that, you've definitely got my attention.
Right. It makes you wonder, what if everything we thought we knew about early humans was only half the story?
I mean, it's definitely a question worth asking.
Totally. And this book, written by an academic from Columbia and Notre College, is really making waves.
It's gotten a lot of people in feminist scholarship talking, that's for sure.
It's serious scholarship.
Yeah.
Not just some out there idea. So the main thing is, the book claims that early human societies, like way back, might have actually been gynocentric.
Yeah, gynocentric, meaning women were the ones calling the shots.
Hold on, women were in charge.
Leading, organizing, even the spiritual stuff, picture that. A whole society where women held the power.
That totally flips the script on that man the hunter thing we're always told about.
Exactly. That's what's got everyone so fired up. It makes you rethink everything we thought we knew about, like where we even came from.
And if we got that wrong, what else are we getting wrong? About everything.
Right. About gender roles, about how societies work. I mean, who knows?
Like finding out the map you've been using is totally wrong. You start to question everything.
Exactly. And one of the big ideas in this book is ecogynocentrism. Basically, early humans, they were all about that connection with nature.
Instead of trying to fight it, they lived in harmony with it.
Yeah, they didn't see themselves as separate from nature, but like a part of it.
Interesting. So what kind of evidence is there for this? I mean, how do we even know?
Well, there are these Venus figurines that they found all over Europe.
I've seen pictures. They're pretty cool.
Some are like 30,000 years old, and they're not just random sculptures. They put a huge emphasis on the female form.
Especially on things like fertility, motherhood, that kind of stuff.
Right, and that gives us a totally different view of how women were seen back then compared to, the societies that came later where men were in charge.
Fascinating. It's like they were celebrating women not just for how they looked, but for their power to create life.
Yeah, and it kind of makes you wonder, what was it about these early societies that allowed them to embrace those values? What were they doing differently?
And the million-dollar question, what happened?
What caused that change? Why did things shift so dramatically?
We've got to get to the bottom of this. But first, before I forget, we got to talk about the cats.
The cats. Okay, yeah.
The book mentions them being domesticated, like way before dogs.
Yeah, some researchers think that cats were domesticated around 10,000 years ago, before dogs even. And in lots of ancient cultures, cats weren't just pets.
Like in ancient Egypt, they had cat goddesses, right?
Exactly. Bastet, for example. This whole powerful goddess with the head of a cat, all about protection and fertility and motherhood, all those life-giving forces.
It's like this pattern, cats, goddesses, a deep respect for the power of women, this connection to the natural world.
It really makes you think, what did those ancient societies understand that we've forgotten? It's like stumbling on a secret chapter of history, one that turns everything upside down.
I know, right? It's exciting, but also kind of makes you think twice about things. So if these early societies were so in tune with nature, so successful with women leading the way, what happened?
The million-dollar question.
Why the switch? From gynocentric to patriarchal, I mean?
Yeah.
Why'd things change so much?
Yeah, and the book points to something that we usually think of as like the start of civilization, but it might have also been what led to this power shift, agriculture.
Hold on. How does farming lead to, like, male dominance?
Well, when you think about it, what does agriculture do? It leads to more resources.
Okay, more food, more resources, sure.
Right. And history shows us, time and time again, when you have surplus resources, you get competition.
Power struggles, right.
So in this case, men were able to use those power struggles to their advantage. Exactly. When societies went from hunting and gathering to settling down and farming, controlling land and resources became the most important thing. And let's face it, back then, physical strength mattered. Men were often in a better position to take control.
So it wasn't just about brute force, but controlling the food, the wealth, everything.
Precisely. The book also talks about specific historical events that might have sped things up too. Like, something called the Yamnaya invasions. Happened around 8,000 years ago.
Yamnaya. Okay, now that's a new one. Sounds like something straight out of Game of Thrones. Who were they?
So the Yamnaya, they were nomadic pastoralists from the Eurasian steppes, and they show up in Europe right around the time we see this huge cultural and even genetic shift.
So a full-blown invasion, though. They just swooped in and changed everything overnight.
It was probably more complicated than that. There's definitely evidence of violence, of conquest, for sure. but it seems like there is also a lot of cultural exchange happening at the same time.
Intermingling, but also domination, like you said.
Right, it's probably a blend of all of those things.
Wow. So imagine these societies are just living their lives in harmony with nature, and then this new group shows up with a whole different way of life, a different view of power. It really makes you think about those cultural clashes and how they can change everything.
It's true, and it wasn't just a clash between men and women, you know. The book argues that it was this bigger shift in consciousness, a move away from those earlier values of balance and interconnectedness.
So even though patriarchal systems became the norm,
Mhm.
did those old beliefs just disappear completely? I mean, what about the goddess?
That's a great question, and the perfect place to pick things up in our next part, because even though the power shifted dramatically, those ideas, feminine power, the reverence for nature, they didn't vanish entirely, more like they went underground.
Hiding out, waiting for the right time to resurface.
Exactly. And, you know, those echoes of the goddess, they pop up in some unexpected places.
Oh, yeah. Like where?
Well, we see them in mythology, in religious traditions, even in art and literature, across all kinds of cultures spanning centuries.
It's like those old stories, those images of powerful women. They're these whispers from a time long ago, reminding us that there's another way to be.
That's a beautiful way to put it, and it's what makes this book so powerful. It's not just about changing how we see history, it's about reclaiming it, remembering what we were, what we valued, and maybe what we could be again.
So we're seeing these glimpses of the goddess throughout history. But it's not just about looking back nostalgically, right?
You got it. The book connects this shift away from gynocentric societies to some pretty big issues we're dealing with even today.
Okay, now I'm really interested. How do those two things connect? Our modern world and these ancient power structures.
Well, remember those Venus figurines? The ones we were talking about. Celebrating the female form, fertility, all of that.
Yeah, they were amazing.
The book argues that as societies moved away from those values, they started to see nature and women as something to control.
Instead of being a part of nature, we became separate from it. I thought we were better, I guess.
Exactly. And the book argues that this shift in thinking, this need to control and dominate, it's at the root of a lot of our modern problems. Environmental destruction, social injustice, even things like factory farming.
That's a pretty big claim. How does the book back that up?
Well, let's take factory farming, for example. The book argues that this whole industrialized approach to food production, treating animals like just products to be bought and sold, it comes directly from that desire to control, to exploit nature for profit.
Yeah, it's a far cry from that reverence for life that those earlier societies seem to have. And it's not just the animals, is it? Factory farming, it affects the environment, human health, everything.
You're absolutely right. It's all connected. When we lose sight of that interconnectedness, when we start seeing the world as something to dominate, it creates a ripple effect, and it has some pretty bad consequences for everyone.
It does feel overwhelming sometimes, like these systems are just so big, so ingrained. What can we even do about it? If these deep-seated patriarchal systems are the root cause, is there any hope for real change?
That's the question that really stays with you, even after you finish the book. And the author, she doesn't pretend to have all the answers, but she suggests that real change has to start with a shift in how we see the world, rediscovering those values of interconnectedness, balance, and respect for the earth, for each other.
Like remembering what those ancient societies seem to understand so intuitively, we are nature. We're not separate from it.
Exactly. And that starts with questioning everything. The stories we tell ourselves, the assumptions we make about power, about progress. It's about looking to the past, not with rose-colored glasses, but with this willingness to learn.
Like we've been given this ancient map, and now it's our job to figure out what it means, to find our way back to a way of life that's more balanced, more sustainable.
Perfectly said. And that's what this deep dive has been all about. Not just uncovering these fascinating pieces of information, but starting a conversation, opening up possibilities.
So to everyone listening, we'll leave you with this. What if those ancient societies weren't so different from us? What if the wisdom they had, the values they lived by, what if they're still within our reach? What would it take for us to rediscover them, to create a future where humanity and nature, we thrive together?